Let's do just a brief introduction. CANNUPA Luger's on the end down here. Thanks for coming. Sculptor, multimedia artist, Standing Rock in North Dakota, and that's his baby because I just butchered his name. Sorry about that. Attended Institute of American Indian Arts. A few years ago we had a couple events at Warehouse 21 that he helped us with a lot. Meredith does show at Indian Market, and originally from Oklahoma, Swedish and Cherokee, and great artist, great narrative teller. And besides that, really, if you haven't seen her blog, you got to take a look at her blog. Very, very smart, and has a lot of really good things to say. Alex Peña, right here, and Alex is formally trained with an MFA from Madison, Wisconsin. Returned to Santa Fe and is now teaching printmaking at Institute of American Indian Arts. And our wild card on the end here, the non-artist in the group, Matthew Martinez, is from Okiawinge. The idea is that art permeates our lives every place. It's not just something you put on a piece of paper, but it's something about style and living, the clothes you selected to wear tonight. So what we're going to do, what we're going to focus on is this issue of quality, this nebulous kind of thing that's out there. Now, you can take quality, because I'm associated with Indian art and with native arts, you might think all I care about is what you see in the booth and whether or not you're going to buy it. That is not my principal concern here. My principal concern is creating that conversation or that dialogue about how do we determine what is quality. So as non-native people, we might come to a booth and think, wow, that just speaks to me in some way, but we might have no understanding of why it does. Now maybe through conversation with the artist, we'll then begin to gather what that means. So that's one thing about quality. So the next thing about quality is about native art quality. And what is there a difference of quality in the native worlds as compared to the non-native worlds? And then we'll get to that last question about what is quality in Indian Market, and you can ask some questions about how we determine that and what we do about that at Indian Market. So, who's going to start, America?
What was your first point?
You're gone.
Did everyone in here read Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance? Because that's the first thing I thought about, where, yeah, he made such a quest for quality, and he said this is amazing, undefinable, unquantifiable, and maybe that's the definition of quality, that's unquantifiable, so it's difficult to talk about. But I'm a huge fan of Heather Ottone. Does anyone know her? She's a Choctaw Chickasaw from Oklahoma. I think she's a super genius. But she outlined, she's the first person I know that has formally outlined a way from an indigenous background to assess and critique indigenous artwork. And she says the more she's modest, she says it's just being developed, it's obviously very imperfect. But her way of looking at it is first look at materiality of something, and then secondly look at the symbolism and the metaphor, and then thirdly look at the cultural reciprocity, sorry I'm butchering that word, the cultural exchange that's happening. So she's the first person, the only person I know that's actually outlined a way to do that. So art's obviously subjective, and everyone here values and loves different art, I'm sure. But through using these three lenses, she's suggesting that maybe this is a way to look at Native American art. And I would put forth, obviously there's so much diversity in 2 continents of people, from Greenland to Tierra del Fuego. There's obviously diversity in Native art, but I think there are some commonalities that we can grab onto. And there is a fundamental difference in the Native American art world versus the mainstream art world. If we go to Miami Basel, we're going to have a different experience than if we come to Indian Market. So I think it's appropriate, based on our 13,000 years of art creating that we know about, that we have our own standards. So just putting that out there as a possibility, a way of looking at quality, possibly.
You can pass it whoever you like.
Okay.
Yes, I agree. The thing that was interesting to me, though, that America just brought up was that we do have a history of art making, but not of so much like art making as a commodity. We enjoyed making whatever it is that we used beautiful. You know, like if it was a knife, it was going to be absolutely beautiful. There's like my hat. You know, I bought this hat and I fixed it up, so it was mine. You know, it was my hat. So it's like that same kind of thing. So quality being a subjective thing is like, for me, my work is a byproduct. It's what's left over after I've developed the most qualitative aspect, which is like the creation process. I enjoy that part. Once that's completed, you know, I may end up with something beautiful, I may not, but as far as quality goes, I think first and foremost, I begin to be the first person to determine whether it's quality, and beyond that, it's just a level of acceptance from anybody else, any viewer. So we're all in this together, gang.
I had an interesting professor in graduate school after all kinds of critiques, you know, group critiques with a whole bunch of different students, and at the end of all of it, she goes, you know, it only matters to you if you like it or not. So I think that's important, and it's talking about, to me, an idea of honesty, especially when it comes to quality. Is it honest to the artist's self? Or are you trying to make something that looks quality, or make something to make somebody happy, or whatever it is? And so I really appreciated that one professor's advice to me, is that you're the one who's going to look at it, and you're the one who's going to ultimately assess its quality or its worth, or whatever it is. All the professors in the world can say all they want to, but it's you in the end. And so I think that's important for my work, is for me to be honest to who I am, and to have that come across in my artwork, and not force myself into any type of imagery or any type of symbolism or anything that doesn't feel right to me, that doesn't feel honest to me. So that's how I assess my own quality of my work. When I feel myself going away from that, and feeling myself being coerced by another outside force, then that's when I start to question my own quality of my work, is when I lose that honesty.
Good afternoon, it's an honor to be here, and I appreciate everybody on the panel and your words tonight, and your presence here. One thing to think about, or one of the notions that first came to mind, was this idea of the English word of quality, right? You really can't translate it from a Tewa perspective into an English sensibility of what quality and value and aesthetics might mean from a tribal perspective. But one thing that Pueblos often think and practice is this idea of inclusion and incorporating aspects. There's always this notion of thinking about new ways of understanding through trade, through travel, and we can point to our use of coral, through seashells, the macaw, parrot feathers that we use in song and ceremony, have always been these items of travel and trade and influence, and they've become, in a sense, Puebloized or Tewaized, if that's a word, when you think about, you know, what makes those specifics. When it comes to Pueblo sensibilities and Pueblo religion, they've come from the outside world, so to speak, but they've become ours. We don't own them, but they're ours in a sense when it comes to using them, to using songs and prayer. And when I think about these notions and working with students, we always point to these examples of trade and travel and influence. And Indian market is one way to think about this traffic and culture in northern New Mexico, and our approaches to market and our approaches to the art world. And so, you know, I'm not sure I have a quick answer to what quality is specifically, but it's this notion of how we adapt to new ways of understanding and how we approach art and beauty from a tribal perspective. And it's an ever ongoing conversation. And hopefully this panel will sort of lend some insight to that too. So if anyone has a response to that.